Module 5, line 55, extension of closing date. A, in the event closing funds from buyers' lenders are not available on closing date due to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau closing disclosure delivery requirements, in parentheses, CFPB requirements, if paragraph 8B is checked, loan approval has been obtained, and lender's underwriting is complete, then closing date shall be extended for such period necessary to satisfy CFPB requirements, provided such period shall not exceed 7 days. Okay, so the lender reaches out to the listing agent, says, I'm sorry, we're not ready to close. And the seller's like, well, if they don't close, I'm taking their escrow. Under what circumstance can the seller not do that? And do they have to automatically extend?
So there's a caveat to everything. And so what this is going to say is that in the event 8B is checked, if there is a financing contingency in place and lending is not ready to close, there's 2 requirements that have to be met. We need to make sure that the lender's underwriting process is complete, underwriting's complete, and we have loan approval based on the terms that we specify in section 2. So if we have loan approval and underwriting is complete, and it's just a matter of the 3-day TRID compliance and we didn't get the loan estimate and the CD out to the buyer, we can extend. We can't extend forever. In fact, the last version of this contract gave us 10 days. They shortened it to 7, which I think makes more sense because typically it's only a 3-day TRID rule. So factor in weekends and maybe an extra day. The max you would really need is 7 if underwriting is complete. So, and it happens automatically. It doesn't require an addendum. It's pre-printed language here. The lender needs to notify all parties that underwriting is complete, we have loan approval, and we need an additional X amount of days, not to exceed 7, in order to get to closing.
Module 5, extension of closing date. B, line 61. If an event constituting force majeure causes services essential for closing to be unavailable, including the unavailability of utilities or issuance of hazard, wind, flood, or homeowners insurance, closing date shall be extended as provided in Standard G. Well, here in Florida, we have these wonderful things called hurricanes.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, how that may affect somebody under this circumstance.
Okay, so the force majeure clause, and we'll define it for you in later modules, it's defined specifically to include lots of different things. Yes, hurricanes, now COVID, pandemic, epidemics are included in this, and various other acts of God, which is a super broad term and definition, and I have seen people try to use it and apply it in every which way. But in the event there is a force majeure, an act of God that prevents utility service. Why is utility service so important? Well, we can't do final walkthroughs if I don't have utilities. Not only that, but if I don't have utilities, I can't send a wire transfer. Like, everything's electronic these days. So we need to have utilities, and then obviously insurance. So most lenders are going to require insurance. Even if there's not a lender or this isn't a finance transaction, the buyer's entitled to the ability to get insurance on this property. And anytime there's a storm looming in particular, insurance companies stop issuing policies. They freeze. Yeah. So we'd have to wait. We have up to 7 days until after the force majeure ends. So if it's a 3-day hurricane or a 7-day power outage, we have 7 days after everything is restored and back to normal.
And in those circumstances, of course, all parties really need to work with each other because there's a lot of gray areas sometimes. So just know that those are circumstances where you will be forced to extend, and you won't be able to force the buyer to close before the hurricane because it's in the seller's best interest to do so.
Of course. You
cannot do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, from a liability standpoint, from a risk of loss standpoint, nobody wants the property in their hands during that hurricane. But if it's not possible to close for various reasons explained, then everything will resume up to 7 days after things come back online.